Did I get that on? Awesome. All right, how's everybody today? I love coming to a new organization I've never been to before, and everybody's smiling. It's, they don't know you, so it's kind of deceitful, right? It's like, oh yeah, we're awesome people, so we're gonna smile at you. But no, I know you're awesome. I've enjoyed meeting those that I've met, and Becky and Mark, thank you for leading. And was it Krista, I think, was doing the announcements? Thank you for doing that. It's so great to be with you this morning. If you're here for the first time, or you are a seasoned attender, welcome. And I believe we're recording this morning as well. So if you're watching online later on, again, welcome. Good to have you here. As Krista said, I came down from Edmonton this morning and had just a great drive. A buddy of mine who I know some of you know, Jeremiah, said, Tim, when you drive down this morning, you're going to just enjoy it because it's just a really, really great drive. And I tell you, after I passed Camrose, I was at Highway 56, I think it is. The sun was just coming up over on my left-hand side. I was driving, so it was great. It was just really, really pretty, and all the colors, they're changing, and it was great. I'd much rather see them than on my lawn. I have a big lawn at home, and all my trees are shedding their leaves, and I have a lot of work to do this weekend when I get back home. But it is so great to be with you. And on this Thanksgiving Sunday of all times to be with you. So happy Thanksgiving. My family, they couldn't be with me today. They send their regards as well. Happy Thanksgiving. It was great to hear some of the things that we're thankful for today. That was encouraging. Because you know, when 2019 rolled into 2020, we had no idea of what the next 10 months would really hold for us, did we? If you're like me, you were maybe thinking of setting some New Year's resolutions, of things you wanted to change in your life. Maybe there is some boundary markers that you wanted to put into place, saying, okay, I'm going to do this differently this year. Maybe you were dreaming dreams about places you wanted to go visit, or things you wanted to accomplish. We were thinking of holidays, and that all got changed in a blink of an eye for my family. Maybe there were things you wanted to do, or maybe there was major life moments for you. Maybe you were graduating, or you knew somebody that was graduating, or maybe you had somebody in your family that was getting married. My daughter is going to get married this upcoming year, and we're not sure what we can do yet. Is it going to be a wedding of 5 people? Is it going to be a wedding of 50 people? We don't know. You don't know. It's just so different than what we would have thought. And with COVID, it's really introduced this whole new dynamic to our lives, hasn't it? And so different than what we thought 10 months ago. I heard on the radio this week, 2019 in some ways feels like yesterday, and in some ways it feels like a million miles away because of just everything that's happened. And it's just so very, very, very different than what we hoped for. Now in October, at least in my neck of the woods in Edmonton, I hear every week, companies that have had to lay off people. In fact, I looked this up just before I came down. 9% of all Canadians are out of work. Which translates, that doesn't sound like a huge number, but 1.8 million people are out of work right now over Canada. And even this week I heard that more companies up in the oil field, the company that I help with, we do events for them sometimes, so they've had to lay off a bunch of people. And now we're at that time where companies realize, I can't bring people back, so there's more layoffs. And it's just a hard time for a lot of people. And really, what that translates to for us, and I was so encouraged to hear you today say to be thankful for so many things, but if we're to be really honest, sometimes it's just hard to be thankful. Because what happens, and this is totally natural and normal if this happens to you, because our environments and our situations, they tend to take the most of our mind power, and it's hard sometimes to focus on being thankful if we are honest with ourselves. And we're in environments sometimes like this morning where we're encouraged to, and it's great because it takes us back, reminds us of what God has done for us. But day-to-day life, sometimes it's just really hard to maintain that heart of thankfulness, or that spirit of thankfulness, if I think we were to be really honest with ourselves. At least it is for me. And I suspect that for you, because we're all very similar, that you have that same challenge sometimes. It's just hard sometimes to be thankful. And can I just tell you, if that is you, it's totally normal, and it's totally okay, and it's totally understandable why you feel that way. You may not know this, but this the feeling and the behavior of being thankful actually comes out of another behavior. And that other behavior is actually the behavior, the value of being grateful. And that might sound like a play on words, but it really isn't. Because here's the interesting thing about gratitude, is that we, by nature, we don't tend to want to be grateful. We don't tend to gravitate towards that behavior. And here's the thing about gratitude that's so crazy cool, is that when you practice that behavior of gratitude, it actually unlocks a lot of other positive values in our life. Not only does it unlock the value of being thankful, but, and I've been doing a lot of research on this over the last couple of weeks, gratitude actually can unlock the value of being generous. Gratitude can also make you more optimistic. Gratitude makes you more of an encouraging person. When you walk in gratitude, it actually you walk in greater happiness. And in some societies, I've been reading some psychology papers this last couple of weeks. In some studies, when you walk in gratitude, believe it or not, it actually even lowers your blood pressure, and it actually improves your sleep. Interesting. The truth is that the value of gratitude unlocks so many positive values. And I just gave you some. There's way more. It unlocks so many positive values in the life, but the tragedy is that for many of us, we don't really walk or tend to want to gravitate towards walking in the value of gratitude. And it's so important that we do so, because if you want to walk towards God's next for you, walking in and using the value of gratitude is essential to discovering what that next is. So what I thought would be interesting today on this Thanksgiving Sunday is to take a look at the Bible, which is God's instructional manual for us, and see if the Bible talks about gratitude. And you're probably like me and say, come on, Tim, of course it does. Because you wouldn't be here talking to us if it didn't. And if you're thinking that, you're absolutely right. It does say something. And I want to take us to an account in the book of Luke. Now, Luke is found in the New Testament. The Bible, as you know, or may not know, has two parts to it. There's an Old Testament, which is the old part, and there's a New Testament, which is the new part. And the New Testament starts with Matthew, Mark, and then we have the book of Luke. And it's the third book. And the book of Luke was written by a guy by the name of Luke. And Luke was also wrote the book of Acts, if you didn't know that. And the thing about Luke that's important for us to know is that Luke was actually a doctor. He was a physician. And as a physician, Luke was a man of science. Luke was a man of fact. Luke was a man of detail. And because of that, when we look at this book of Luke, we find a lot of detail and an accurate historical account of Jesus' life. So we're going to look at the book of Luke starting in chapter 17. And in this chapter, in this section of the Bible, we find that Jesus asks this really incredible question that really goes to the heart of experiencing true gratitude. So that's the plan. So let me set this up for you. Let's throw up that verse. We're going to start in Luke chapter 17, verse 11. And it says this: On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus went along the border between Samaria and Galilee. So what's happening geographically here is in the nation of Israel, up on the northern part of Israel, we have Galilee. And in the bottom parts, where Jerusalem was, we have Judea. And in the middle of those two areas, so at the top part we have this bottom part, in the middle part we have this area called Samaria. And what's important to know about Samaria is that it contained the Samaritans. And the Bible teaches us that the Jewish people overall didn't really get along that well with the Samaritans. They didn't really like them. They kind of thought they were kind of second-class citizens. They kind of shunned them. If they were walking on the road, the Jews would go to the other side of the road. They wanted nothing to do with them. And this set up a lot of conflict. And they thought that the Samaritans had this second-class religion. They just really didn't like them. They didn't get along. But Jesus was going along the border between Samaria and Galilee. He's coming down to Jerusalem. And the story goes on to say that as Jesus entered the village there, 10 men with leprosy. Let's stop there for a second, because I want to talk to you about leprosy, because it's not something you think about a whole lot anymore. Because leprosy in today's world has relatively been cured. It's not gone, it's not wiped out, but there is a cure. It still exists, but it can be treated. But in Bible days, this was bad news. And I thought it was interesting in today's climate with COVID, because there's such fear about it, there's such worry about it, and it would have not been unlike what it would have been when it comes to leprosy in Bible days. Because in Bible days, there was no cure for leprosy. If you got leprosy, it was really for you a death sentence. Like I said, there's no cure. People thought it was highly, highly contagious. And people were so afraid of this disease that if you were to contract it, you were actually removed from the community. You were cast out of the community. You actually had to live either with a bunch of other people that had leprosy, or you had to live by yourself outside of the community. So what that meant is you couldn't hang out with your friends. You essentially said goodbye to your family. You may not see them again. You were shunned. You couldn't really do a whole lot. You couldn't go to the community center. You couldn't hang out with your buddies. You couldn't go for coffee. You couldn't do any of that. It was all gone for you. You essentially lost your life. You couldn't engage in society at all. You couldn't worship. And here's the thing about it too, is that people actually thought that if you got leprosy, God was judging you. They thought there was sin in your life. There's something wrong. God doesn't like you very much right now. He's punishing you. So leprosy had this huge stigma to it. That it was evil. It was wrong. It was God's condemnation on you. And leprosy, though, was not an immediate death sentence. In fact, if you caught leprosy, you could live a long time with this disease before you passed away. So every day you woke up, every day you rose, it was a reminder of how much you had lost. It was a reminder every day of that you didn't belong, of that people didn't like you. And so now we have in this story 10 men who have this dreaded disease. They see Jesus coming from a distance, and they get up, and what they do is they stand at a distance. You can throw that up. They stand at a distance, and they cry out. So they're shouting out from a distance, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. For some reason, word had got to them that Jesus was coming. They went out to meet him, and in faith and in some hope, they're hoping against all odds that Jesus is going to do something. Now, there's some things going on here at this point that we miss, because we tend to read, if you've read this passage or if you're familiar with it, or maybe you've never heard it, but there's some things that we miss in today's understanding, in today's culture, and I'm going to point out a couple of them to you. Number one is that what's really going on here is these lepers have this skin disease, right? And it was law that they had to be in isolation. And again, as I was preparing this and thinking about this, man, that sounds a little bit like today a little bit, right? You know, a couple, 3 weeks ago, I had a potential encounter where I might have been exposed to COVID. So as soon as I found out, guess what I did? Grabbed my pillow, I grabbed my blanket, I moved down to the basement. But in my case, you know, I had the TV down there, I had my computer down there, I had the Xbox, I had video games down there, I had my music down there, my keyboard down there. All I was missing was like a little mini fridge. It would have been like I was a teenager again. This was not like that in that time. It was isolation. It was, and this was as long as the disease lasted. But there were some cases where not everything that was thought was leprosy was actually leprosy. And in some cases, the disease or whatever the skin rash that these people had would clear up. And if that happened, they had to go see a priest. I'm glad this is not true today. They had to go see a priest, and the priest's responsibility was to examine their skin, and it was their responsibility to look through their hair and then they had to make a call on whether or not this disease had cleared up, or this rash had cleared up. And if, and only if it had, they would get their life back. They could now integrate back into society. They could have dinner with the folks. They could hang out with their buddies at the coffee shop. They could do all these things again. But here's the thing that we sometimes miss, is we don't know in this story where the priest was. We don't know if it was an hour's walk away. We don't know if it was 3 days walk away. The Bible doesn't tell us where the priest was. All we know is that the law said, at this point in the story, is that if they thought something was up, they had to go see the priest. But here's the second thing that I want to point out, what's going on here, is that because you were shunned, because you were an outcast, because you weren't supposed to integrate with society, you have to be pretty sure that something was going on. If you were going to risk public condemnation, public being cast out, people calling you out and just shunning you, if you were going to go make this journey. Do you understand what I'm saying? You had to be sure something was up. Because if you weren't sure, you just have to live through all of that pain again. So what's going on here is these guys had leprosy. And for them even to come see Jesus was a pretty big step of faith. So these guys make the decision to go see Jesus. And Jesus actually says to them, he says, go show yourselves to the priest. Now you see why this is such a big thing and why we sometimes miss this? Is because for them to actually make this step was a pretty big step of faith. They had to be sure something was going on. So they make the decision and they leave to go see the priest. And again, we don't know if this was an hour away. We don't know if this was a day away. We don't know if they had to go all the way to Jerusalem, which is about a 2-3 day walk from where they potentially were. We just don't know. But what we do know is somewhere along the way, something happens. Something happens. And that happening is they get healed. And now this is where this account starts to really intersect with this whole value of gratitude. Because Luke tells us, and we can move on, he said, and as they went, they were cleansed of their leprosy. And let's go to one more slide in advance. And one of them, how many? One of them. This is important. We're going to come back to this in just a couple seconds. But one of them comes back. And again, we don't know if this was an hour away, if it was 3 days. We don't know. We just don't know how long this was. All we know is that one of them, when he saw that he was healed, came back to Jesus. One of them turns around. When he realizes that something has happened to him, he turns around and he walks back to Jesus. And if this was 2 days into the journey, you see how significant this is? He took the time to come back. And he does this. We can advance it. She's shouting, praise God. And he falls to the ground at Jesus' feet. What does he do? He's thanking him for what he has done. And you know what's really cool about this story? And Luke, remember I said Luke was a guy of facts, of details. Advance that. He was a Samaritan. Remember, Samaritans are the ones that didn't get along with the Jewish people. Jesus was a Jew. So he is so moved by what has happened to him. He comes back, even though he already is an outcast because he's Samaritan, but he makes the point of coming back. And I want you to think about this principle a little bit of going back, of returning and thanking, because the reason why he did that is he wanted to thank the one who had enabled him to move forward with his life. Remember how I said at the beginning, gratitude, thanksgiving is so important to us moving to the next that God has for it. This guy realized God has done something, Jesus has done something in my life, and I'm going to return thanks because he has helped me to move forward with my life. And Jesus then asks this question that really goes to the heart of experiencing gratitude. And you know what I think? My mind always is going a bazillion miles a minute. And I tend to like to fill in the blanks where maybe the Bible doesn't always give us the complete story. The Bible gives us everything we need. But my mind races a little bit. I like to tell stories and I like to be creative. And my mind starts to race here a little bit because I like to fill in the blanks. But Jesus asks this question. He says this. Didn't I heal how many? 10. And this is what my mind thinks. I think maybe Jesus had a smile on his face. Because he knew what he had done. But I think that what he's thinking here is he's kind of thinking maybe he's playing with the disciples, maybe he's playing a little bit with the people that are around. I don't know, I'm just making this up. But maybe he's thinking, maybe he says, hey, didn't I have enough power to heal all 10? Did something not work? Were you too far away that the power didn't reach you? Did I not get it right? I think those kinds of things. And that's not in the Bible, it's just me making it up. But I think those things. And then he asks the question. You ready for this question? Here's the question. Where are the other 9? Remember when you were a kid? I know for some of you that was like 2 weeks ago. Some of you that might have been a little bit longer ago. But when you were a kid, and let's say your mom and dad or a responsible adult took you to a birthday party, or maybe you went to a mall. I'm not sure what the Stedman Mall is, but I've seen small town malls, and they're like 3 stores and 5 days are open. I've worked in small towns, so I know what it's like. But let's say you went to somewhere and somebody gave you something. They gave you, like, maybe it was a present. Maybe it was a birthday party, maybe it's your birthday party, and somebody gave you something that was wrapped. Back when my kids were small, I was working in a church, we had this lovely senior lady, and she would walk around with candies in her purse. And all the kids, of course, figured this out. It's amazing how smart kids are. They figured out this lady was the lady who gave out candy. So they would go see her. She was the sweetest lady. She's passed away now, but she's the sweetest lady. And she would give the kids like a toffee or a candy of some sort. And if that was you, because I know that's happened to all of us, and the responsible parent with you usually asked you a question when that happened. Anybody know what that question was?
Did you say thank you?
I heard it. What do you say? I've done it. I've done it to my kids. What do you say? And I think the reason why we, as a kid, we don't care about that. We're thinking, let me just open up my present. Hey, let me just eat this candy. And if you didn't catch the kid fast enough, the candy was already in your mouth, right? But as an adult, what we know, that as a kid we didn't know, is that until there is an expression of gratitude, there is something that is incomplete. The circle's not finished. It's not done yet. Until there is somebody saying thank you for what somebody else has done, it's just not finished. And I think that's what Jesus is doing here. Because he's pointing out, by asking this question, he's saying something's not complete. Something's not quite right yet. And Jesus goes on to ask another question, and this is it. Has no one returned to give glory to God except this foreigner? Remember, this is important because it was a Samaritan, right? And Jesus said to the man, stand up and go, your faith has healed you. No one healed you. Now here's what I find interesting, because I think if we were reading this story, and I wouldn't, and you were in isolation, and I wouldn't have pointed all these things out, because we've all been this way. If somebody hadn't come back, we would have never thought twice about the 9 not coming. Because he did come back, we start to think about these 9, and if you're like me, and I'm sure you are, we start to think, man, those 9, they're jerks. How could they not come back? They got their life back, right? They can now go have Thanksgiving with their families. They can hang out at the coffee shop now. They can go back into society. They can go back to work. They can hang out with their friends. They have gotten their life back. And again, remember how we talked about the contrast between that you got the disease, how you were cast out? That was all removed. They got their life back. Jesus gave them their next. Now, that's a message for another day, but I don't want you to miss it. Jesus can give you your next. And here's what I think. I think that if you would track down these guys, if you went to find them, chances are they're incredibly grateful. In fact, I think they're telling anybody who will listen to them what's going on. They're telling their family, hey, guess what? I met this guy. He said go check with the priest. And something happened. We were walking to go set the priest. We weren't even sure what was going to happen. We thought it was silly. But as we were walking, all of a sudden I felt different. I looked at my arm and there was no rash. You know why I know that? Because that's how we're like. If something really cool happens in your life, what do? You tell somebody about it. Of course they're grateful. They're so thankful. They're telling their families. They're telling their friends. They're telling everybody who will listen, because I think they really are grateful. The problem was that they had no clue that something was missing. They had no clue that the circle hadn't been completed. Because, I know because we're like that. Sometimes we totally don't, remember how I said we don't naturally gravitate towards gratitude? That's what's happening. And the problem that they had is the same problem that often we have, is they felt it, they just didn't express it. They felt it, they just didn't express it. But here's the one thing I want you to catch today. If there's one thing, this is what I want you to catch. And that is this, don't miss this, that, and throw it up there, is that until gratitude is expressed, it is perceived as ingratitude. Until gratitude is actually expressed, it is perceived as ingratitude. And the gratitude that you feel towards someone who's maybe done something for you is felt by that person as ingratitude until there is an expression of gratitude. And it's subtle. You almost miss it because it is subtle and you don't really think about it. But unexpressed gratitude communicates ingratitude. And it goes even a step further. And again, this is why it's so subtle. Because unexpressed gratitude over time actually breeds rejection. It's like the time when we moved into our house in Edmonton. And we bought the house and we knew we had to do some renos. So I'd taken off a week of work and I went heavy. I tore out our entire kitchen. I've taken off the cupboards. We had to redo the electrical. And I was doing it all myself because I was a pastor. I didn't make a lot of money, so I didn't want to pay somebody to do it because I'm also cheap. And I was doing all this work myself. And I got to the point where I was laying the laminate floor. And if you've ever done that, it takes time, right? It takes some work. And I tried to take my time, and I was like 2/3 of the way done. And by this time, this is like 3 or 4 days into the project. And my wife comes in, and my wife is a wonderful, wonderful lady, and a person of detail. And she looks at it, and she says, hey, this spot over here doesn't look right. I'll tell you what I didn't hear. I didn't hear, thanks, hon, for all the hard work you've been doing. Thanks for taking the time off of work and getting up early and work. I didn't hear that. And all I heard was, you hate it all. You ever experienced that? You don't have to put up your hands. I can see somebody. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? Over time, unexpressed gratitude has the same effect as rejection. And here's what's scary about this, is that all of us, this is what I know about you, all of us, every single part, every single person in Stedler has this. And that is, our hearts are repelled by rejection. You're this way, I'm this way, everybody in Stedler is this way. Our hearts gravitate towards acceptance, but they are repelled by rejection. And ingratitude is really a sneaky form, or ingratitude is a sneaky form of rejection. It's subtle, but it is rejection. And what that means is that you can ingratitude somebody completely out of your life. family member. It could be like a boss or maybe an employee. It could be a child. In fact, you can ingratitude the person that you would say you love the most right out of your life. Because ingratitude is a subtle form of rejection. Here's the thing. You're not even realizing you're being ungrateful because you are grateful. You are thankful for what people bring into your life. But unexpressed gratitude is perceived as ingratitude. Right now, where I'm at in Edmonton, is I help out churches, I do some coaching. The church I'm at right now, we're actually replanting the church. And it's really cool what we're doing. But that's all volunteer. And so I work at a production company as well in the city. So we do big events. We do everything from, maybe you've heard of it, K-Days. We do that. We do football games. We do concerts. And we do live events of lots of sizes. The only thing we don't really do is when a big tour comes into the city. We don't do that. But everything else we do. When COVID hit back in April, in the period of about 3 hours, we lost about 300 shows. I was talking to the operations guy. I used to be the operations guy, but I left and had just come back, and he was doing it. He said, Tim, I didn't even want to answer the phone because every phone call was either a cancellation of the events that we were doing or a postponement for next year. And can you imagine that? Was the owners, what they were thinking, what we were thinking of in place. And in fact, we had to lay off as a company 40-some people. Some of them part-time, but I was out of work for about 4 months or 3 months because there just was no shows. And so our owners decided that we had to do something different. And what's kind of working right now is this whole virtual environment, this whole online environment. So one area that we excel in as a company, I'm not trying to promote the company, I'm just trying to give you a story. But what we do is we do online events. So if your company wants to do an award show and you can't meet in person, because especially in Edmonton, because we have the highest amount of COVID right now, we have to be so very careful. You can't have more than 15 people in the room. But what you can do is you can put a couple people behind a camera and you can do everything online. And so what they decided to do was, let's take out half of our warehouse and rejig it to support this new line of thinking, this new line of business. So over the last couple of weeks, what we've been doing, a lot of the guys that have been able to come back, is they totally renovated the warehouse. And so on Thursday night, and the reason I'm telling you is because it sets it up for this email that I got on my way home Thursday night from one of the owners, and they're great people. And this is what the owner said. Actually, go ahead and throw up that picture. So this is what, it's kind of dull, but this is what the new warehouse looks like. So that's what we do, and it's kind of cool. We get a couple people on stage with cameras and we film, and it's really cool. It's all done online. And so one of the owners writes this email to, there's only about 6 or 7 of us on staff right now. And he says this, hey all, just want to let you know how over the moon, Kelly's the other owner, Kelly and I am about the studio. That's the studio. Everyone's countless hours to get it ready, and the 6 events, because by Thursday we've done 6 events, and it's because we do this with small people are excited. The countless hours to get it ready, and the 6 events that have already taken place couldn't have gone off any better. That's a testament to all of you. We have a crazy great team and couldn't be more proud of you. Let's keep it going. Don't get COVID. Stay safe. Coolest room in the city, period. And I wish you could see it up close because it is really, really cool. I read that, and because I've been working on this message the last couple of weeks, I thought, man, what an incredible example of gratitude. Because you know what that does to me as an employee? It's like, sure, what do we do next? Tell me, what can we do next? Like, sign me up. I want to keep going. In contrast, my wife is a hairdresser. And my wife just changed shops. And but she just this last week had lunch or coffee with one of her former co-workers that had worked at the previous shop. And they've since she's left have gone through like a manager change, and things are really, really different. And so the co-worker was telling my wife that just about the change, that people are leaving, people are just upset, They don't want to work. And I'm thinking in contrast to the email I just got, but that's exactly it. Because what? Our hearts are repelled by rejection. Our hearts gravitate towards acceptance. So here's my challenge for you. Who in your life do you take for granted? Who do you owe a debt of gratitude towards? And if you think about it, you need to close the loop on. I suspect that as you've been listening, you've got some mental pictures of some people that you might have to have a conversation with. Because you've never closed the loop. And it's not that you're ungrateful. But unexpressed gratitude communicates what? Ingratitude. So here's my challenge for you this morning. Are you going to be the one who came back? Or are you going to be the group of the 9 who felt it, but didn't take the time to express it? So who is that person, or who are those people that you owe a debt of gratitude towards that you need to close the loop with? Maybe they're in their community. Maybe it's a loved one. Maybe it's an employee. Maybe it's a boss. Truth is, there's people in our lives that have helped us to move to our next. And we do owe them a debt of gratitude. You don't want to be like the 9. You don't want to be like the ones who just felt it but didn't express it. You want to be like the 1. You want to be the better person. You want to be the person who expresses the gratitude that you feel. Because here's what I want for you as a church. Here's what I want for you instead. Because I know there's people in your community, because this is true of every community, but I know there's people in your community who don't know what they think about God. They don't even know if they believe God exists. But what they will be attracted to is acceptance. They will be attracted to love. And this issue of expressing gratitude might be that issue that helps somebody to see, man, those guys love each other. Those guys care for each other. Man, I don't know what it is about them, but they like each other. And they care for each other. And that might be the one thing that's going to tip somebody over the edge and bring them into a relationship with Jesus. It might be the one thing that's going to help you move to your next. Because remember what I said, expressing gratitude is so vital to experiencing the next that God has for you. I know you're grateful. Take the time to express it. Because unexpressed gratitude is perceived as ingratitude, and it's perceived as rejection, and nobody wants to feel rejected. So who is it? Who is it that we need to close the loop with? And would you be willing to write them a note, or a text, or an email? Here's the thing, I want to do this. If that's your normal motive, or your normal pattern, maybe instead of that, you need to go talk to them in person. Maybe you need to have like a Zoom call, or maybe a virtual coffee or something. Or maybe you just have to go have a conversation. And don't wait. Don't wait just because Tim said it on Sunday. You're just doing it because Tim said, no, go do it. Go close the loop. Go tell them how grateful you are, because you are grateful. I know you're grateful. Be the person that expresses gratitude, because unexpressed gratitude really expresses ingratitude. So would you be willing to close the loop? Who is it? Who is it? Be the one. Be the one who goes back, who returns and closes the loop, because God has a next for you. And I want you to experience what God has next for you. I really do. Can I pray for you? Heavenly Father, we are so thankful for everything that you have done for us. Lord, we heard just testimonies today of gratitude. We've heard, Lord, just the accounts of things that we're just so thankful for. And Lord, ultimately we're thankful because you came and you died for us, that you gave your life so that we could have life. And we are so, so, so incredibly thankful for that. Lord, I pray for those that now, as we've heard words this morning, and people that we need to go close the loop with. Lord, could you give us the courage? Could you give us just the words to say? And could you help us to know Do you have the wisdom to know how to say it? So, Lord, we can close that loop, so that we can express the gratitude that we really feel. Lord, I pray for this church, and I pray for their next. I pray, Lord, that it would come in abundance, and come in a really neat, powerful way. Father, we love you, and we look forward to seeing what you have in store for us. In your name, Jesus, I pray. Amen. I'm not sure who I need to hand it over to. Is it Mark? Is it you?
Yeah, probably me.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah.
Thank you. Mark?
I guess we'll close the loop by saying thank you to Tim for coming out and training us today. Really not a whole lot of anything else to go over. Offerings, of course, is the box there. Online, you can go through our website if you ready to do a transfer. I don't know if that's been mentioned lately or not. I thought so. So yeah, there's, of course, Tidely, and then through Church's website, there's a link on there to click to do transfer. And other than that, as was mentioned, there's the Bible study this afternoon, and that's pretty much it. So everyone be blessed, have a fantastic week. We will see you next week.